The situation across the globe, but specifically I would say in the Middle East and North Africa region, has not been progressing super positively in one direction. I think towards the end of last year, we had our hopes up with the ceasefire in Gaza, in the occupied Palestinian territory, with big plans. But then, sadly speaking, after some time, I think towards the end of February, as of the end of February, with the situation escalating around Iran and the neighborhood immediately, and then after, as of 2nd of March, the situation in Lebanon, we have seen, like, let's say, a movement in the opposite direction. We started the year 2026 for most of the people working in the humanitarian sector, after having gone through deep restructuring because of the very difficult funding situation we had in 2025. So I would say on average, all of us had to see about 30% of our workforce leaving. With that situation, when we have additional requirements to more people who are in need of food, shelter, protection, nutrition, healthcare, then we are asked to provide even more. And of course, we have less means and we have less funding. So this compounds the whole situation. Maybe just in terms of figures, so at least in Lebanon alone, more than 1 million people had been displaced within this past 6-7 weeks, which is about 20% of the population. It's huge. So there's a high number of people who are displaced. There are some, what we say, like common shelters where maybe people are staying in. I think about 10% or a bit more of the 1 million, so about 100,000 are staying in these collective shelters. Others, unfortunately, are either camping in the streets or staying in their vehicle, which is, it's very impressive when you see this. If you know the city, if you know like the city center of Beirut, you would see like tents put up almost everywhere. In Iran, we had figures about like more than 3 million having to leave their homes and going to relocate elsewhere. And of course, we keep dealing with the situation in Gaza and in the West Bank, the situation in Syria, where I think in Syria we're hopeful to see, we're seeing it more towards a stable path. So we're hoping to see this continuing.
So thank you, first of all, for making that so concrete, right? And giving us a sense of what life is really like there. But to your point, okay, so you're already dealing with these deep funding shortfalls, right? The statistic is, only 2% of what's already, frankly, a very diminished amount of money is going into mental health work. Zaman, this is what you do. So let's talk from both sides. So first, sort of what you're seeing as the impact on mental health for displaced people and the refugees you're serving, but also then the workers who are helping them.
Well, definitely. I think Michel already mentioned and talked about the displacement, the major displacement that's happening in Lebanon, in Iran, in Gaza, since the conflict 2 years ago. So we already know about that. But what we never talk about are the hidden scars of the conflict. And that's when the humanitarian workers, the UN staff and the NGO staff, those who work at the humanitarian level are, affected. I do have the numbers here.
Please.
In 2023, according to the Aid Workers Security Database, which is a public database, we had 470 major attacks on the humanitarian workers, 293 killed, 107 kidnapped, 213 wounded in 2023. 24, there was an escalation of 633 major attacks on the humanitarian workers, 387 killed, 138 kidnapped, 308 people wounded. 25 was similar, 566 major attacks on the humanitarian and aid workers, 332 people killed, 144 kidnapped, and 228 wounded. 2026 so far has been insane. You've heard about the peacekeeping the peacekeepers who were killed in Unifil, the Indonesian, the French peacekeepers who've been injured in these locations. So the numbers are really high, and at the same time, really the focus has not been on the people who support the humanitarian efforts.
I want to just have let's let people absorb that for a second and come back to you. But so not only is this incredibly stressful, emotional, right? You're dealing with people whose lives have been upended and you have very limited resources to help them. But your life is on the line, right? So the amount of anxiety and stress that would cause is pretty much unfathomable to a lot of us. Please go on.
It's extremely high. About 50% of all the humanitarian workers experience post-traumatic symptoms, and about 30% experience symptoms of burnout. And of all these people who experience all these symptoms, about 22% of those individuals eventually developed clinical mental health disorders, which means that they would require extreme and long-term therapy. So there is, as I said, there's a hidden scar that really nobody really talks about, but it's basically the humanitarian workers who are on the front line supporting the UN and humanitarian initiatives to be rolled out and to support the population on the ground.